everyone, welcome back to my channel and to all things language, culture, and travel. My name is Michaela, if you're new here. If you're not, welcome back. And welcome to this highly anticipated video. I really think I'm the only one who highly anticipated it, but today I want to talk to you all about Morocco travel, Morocco public transport, and at the end I'm also going to talk about renting a car in Morocco and which one you should choose. Before I get into that information, since I'm not really planning on making separate videos for the time that I spent in Essaouira and in Rabat, go ahead and enjoy this footage. So this is going to be the last video in the Morocco series. I have a couple other Morocco videos, 7 things to do in Marrakesh, as well as an ultimate Morocco guide, where to stay, what to eat, and how much money to bring. So go ahead and watch that video, and if you enjoy the riad that I stayed in, then I do have a link below. I show a beautiful riad called Riad Bithia, and I do have an affiliate link, so if you are interested in booking and use my affiliate link, it would help me out so I can continue to make these videos. Okay, so let's talk about the transport. So let's start with taxis. So I'm going to start with inner city travel. The best way to get around cities in Morocco is going to be with the Petit taxi, which is French, or the taxi Sagheer, which is Moroccan Arabic. So these are basically small taxis that will take you around the city. They are different colors, typically depending on which city that you're in. So in Marrakesh, the Petit taxi are yellow. In Rabat, they're dark blue. In Meknès, they're light blue. I've actually never been to Casablanca, so I can't tell you which color they are there. But you can also find Petit taxi in most of the small cities that you go to. So in Benguerir, for example, where I did my Peace Corps service, they're dark blue, just like Rabat. The first thing I want to mention about these taxis are that they can either be shared or they can be private. Shared just means that they can pick up and drop off other people along the route. Private just means that when you're in the taxi, you're the only person that will be taking that taxi from A to B. And therefore, private taxis are technically going to be more expensive. So here's the catch about the price of Petit taxi. The small taxis are going to vary in price depending on the distance that you take them, generally speaking. So in Marrakesh, taxi drivers are a little bit more unpredictable, and they will most likely negotiate a price with you before you get into the taxi. Just decide what price you are comfortable paying, and don't be too stressed about losing a few cents on the taxi ride. Just remember that taxi drivers are not intentionally trying to scam anyone, they're just trying to feed their families at the end of the day. So small taxis are typically meant to range in price depending on the distance, and the way that you know this is from watching the meter or the compteur. So the compteur will just continue to go up, and you should be able to watch that price as you go from A to B. I do have a couple tips for Petit taxi, and the first one is going to be that you flag down a taxi that already has people in them. So as I mentioned, they're shared taxis. So if you're looking for a taxi, the best thing to do is when taxis are just zooming by you is to try to grab one that already has people in it. Therefore, automatically it becomes a shared taxi and not a private taxi. My tip number 2 is to carry small change on you. After you watch the contour go from 0 all the way up to 10 dirhams, the last thing that you want to do is hand a 20 dirham bill to a taxi driver. Not saying that they're not going to give you change, but a lot of times they don't have change. If you do happen to get a taxi that doesn't have someone already in it, or you didn't negotiate a price and you get into the taxi, just make sure that the meter is working. And if it's not, just say, please turn on the meter. If the taxi driver refuses to turn on the meter and you know that you only want to pay the meter price, you can simply just get out of the taxi. If you did negotiate a price with the taxi driver, you should agree to pay that price and then go your separate ways. Next, I want to talk about the grand taxi. So grand taxi or taxi Kabeer are going to be taxis that can take you from city to city. You can find grand taxi that take you within different cities, and they're usually private, but there's really no need for that. Most of the time you will take a taxi Kabeer from one city to another. In order to get to a station where you can find grand taxis that can take you from, for example, Marrakesh to Essaouira, you have to most likely take a small taxi or get to a grand taxi station. So I usually say al-mahta diyal grand taxi. My Darija is not perfect by any means, but it's always got me where I need to go. So that's mahta diyal grand taxi. These can normally take about 6 passengers, and you will have to wait for it to fill up before you head to your destination. So if you're waiting for a long time, you can also pay that extra seat if you're willing. Depending on the price, you can decide, or you can all share it. So let's say you and 3 other Moroccans are in there and you're waiting for a seat to fill up, you can all share the price if everyone agrees. I've seen it happen. I've seen people pay for the seat just so you can be on your way. The prices of these taxis are gonna vary again depending on distance, but there is a set price. It's not gonna be a meter and it's not gonna be a negotiated thing. So my biggest tip for Grand Taxi is when you get into the Grand Taxi, just ask a Moroccan next to you. Normally you get in and then before you take off you pay, or you can get in and then they'll come around and ask for the money. Ask a Moroccan passenger next to you how much it's gonna cost. So you can look at them and you can say shhal, which means how much, or you can say combien, which is French, and a lot of times Moroccans will know French and they'll know combien, but you will have to, expect a response whether in Moroccan Arabic or in French, or maybe have them show you with your money, and they'll tell you how much the ride normally costs. So I always do this. I always ask a Moroccan next to me, or a lot of times I will ask someone in the city that I'm in to see how much. You can ask people at your hotels, how much does it normally cost to go from here to here? But keep that in mind that if they have their own tours, they're not gonna wanna tell you how much it costs, because they're gonna want you to take their taxi drivers that they know or their tour that they have. So just keep that in mind as well. My 2.5-hour ride from Marrakesh to Essaouira cost me 100 dirhams or $10. And my 20-minute ride from Meknès to Al-Hajib cost me about 14 dirhams or $1.40. My other tip when it comes to seeing how much this ride costs is just to watch how much other Moroccans give to the taxi driver and how much they're giving back. And my other tip, again, is to keep smaller change. It's a lot easier for you to hand a 20 and for them to say it's more and you give them another 20 than it is for you to hand them a 200 dirham bill or 200 dirham note and then them hand you some change that doesn't really make sense. So keeping the smaller bills on you, it's a lot, easier to add than it is to hand them a lot. And a lot of times Moroccans hate to make change. I found this everywhere. They'll always ask you if you have smaller notes. So if you can get smaller notes, 100% recommend keeping the smaller notes on you, keeping dirham coins on you, just 1 dirhams and 2 dirhams. It will literally make your life so much easier. So now let's talk about the bus. So the bus within the city, I don't really recommend learning the system at all unless you're planning on being in Morocco for a long period of time, over months, and you're gonna live in Marrakesh for the summer, or I don't know, maybe studying abroad. But the bus that takes you from city to city, kind of like the Grand Taxi, I don't recommend taking kind of the ones that aren't with a company like CTM or Supratours. Dara and I did this, and while it is extremely affordable, it was uncomfortable and it was very, very long. So the fact that our 2.5 hour trip from Marrakesh to Essaouira ended up taking us 4-ish plus hours because we had to stop in every village along the way, I would never ever recommend that to anyone. There are, however, the two companies that I listed, CTM and Supratours, and they have set times that they leave, unlike the city bus, and they have times that they're going to arrive, and they have, it's more reliable as far as you know when you're leaving, you know how much it costs. The downside to those companies is that they are more expensive. So for our 4-hour trip with the city bus, it was 50 dirhams, $5. But with CTM and Supratours, which I still would recommend taking over the other bus, is going to be $20 to $25 for that ride. So just keep that in mind. If you're a super budgeter and you can find the bus that takes you from Marrakesh to Essaouira or wherever it is that you're going, then take that bus. If you are preferring to get somewhere quick and you don't have a lot of time and you're not, as opposed to spending that $20 for transportation, then take those buses instead. As far as the difference between CTM and Supratours, I think as far as comfort and how long it's going to take you to get there, there's not going to be a huge difference. But I did look up the price, the same trip, so Casablanca to Agadir. The CTM was $247 or roughly $24, and the Supratour was 215 dirhams, which is about $21. The next mode of transportation I want to talk about is the train. I love the train no matter what country it's in, but in Morocco, it's just the best way to see like all of the scenery. It's also very convenient. It's very reliable. You're never gonna have to wait for a train to fill up, for example, as opposed to a Grand Taxi. You can go as far north as Tangier. You can go as far south with the train as of this moment, as of this recording, to Marrakesh, although they're working on a train to Agadir. And you can go as far east as Oujda, and you can go all along the coast as well, as far as Esfi, which is for a little bit further south than Casablanca. Therefore, if you're like me and you do not want to rent a car, you can get so many places with the train. Tangier, you can get to Rabat, Fez, Meknès, Marrakesh, Esfi, or Safi, I think it's called in English, and all the places in between. From each of those places, you can also take Grand Taxis to Chefchaouen, to Nador, to Ouarzazate, or you can take the CTM to Ouarzazate. I don't know about Grand Taxis. Beni Mellal, there's so many places in Morocco you should visit in general. Don't feel like you're limited if you are on public transport. It's a little bit more unreliable, and you have to be a lot more flexible, and you have to get comfortable with traveling with public transport in Morocco, but that does not mean that you have to rent a car by any means. So the reason I made this video is for you to realize that you have options when traveling in Morocco, and that in some cases public transportation will be right for you, and in some cases renting a car will be right for you as well. My biggest piece of advice when traveling Morocco in general, but specifically with the train, is going to be to arrive in one part of the country and exit in another part of the country. This is going to allow you to not have to double back whenever you're getting ready to take your flight out of Morocco. So for example, if you fly in, try to fly into Tangier, for example, and then from Tangier you can take the train down to Rabat, you can stop in Casa, you can take the train over to Fez and Meknès, which are imperial cities. You can come back down and go to Marrakesh and then try to fly out of Marrakesh, or take a bus from Marrakesh to Agadir and then fly out of Agadir if it's possible, or the opposite way. So fly into Marrakesh, out of Tangier, or out of Fez even, and whatever it is, your trip is customizable, but I don't recommend, if you want to see so much of Morocco in such a short period of time, flying into Marrakesh, doing this whole loop, which is really hard to do in Morocco, and then fly back out of Marrakesh, which is what I did. And even though a lot of my trip was to see my family and then show my boyfriend around a little bit, it was actually really stressful because there's a lot of places we wanted to see that we missed out on because we had to circle back and be back in Marrakesh. I did want to give you all some examples of how much pricing is for train tickets. From Marrakesh to Casablanca, it's about $8 to $10. From Casablanca to Rabat, it's between $4 and $5. From Rabat to Meknès, it's roughly $5. And from Rabat to Tangier, it's between $10 and $17. And lastly, I want to talk about renting a car. Since I have personally never rented a car in Morocco, all of the information that I have is from my friend Liz. I'm going to link her blog down below. If you want to know everything, I typed out her entire responses in my blog, which is going to be linked below. So the first thing I asked, of course, was how much did it cost to rent a car in Morocco? And for 11 days, she spent $400, which roughly averaged out to be $36 a day. If you're splitting that with another person, it's obviously only $18 a day, which is not too bad as far as transportation goes. I did want to mention that the $400 did include full coverage and an additional driver. She said in that case it definitely could have been cheaper, but this was based on her experience. They did fill up their gas tank 3 times, about $50 each time, so that's another $150 to tag on. She said they hit a lot of tolls, which were about 70 cents to $1 each time that they went through. She didn't exactly tell me how many they hit, but she said there were quite a few. And traffic tickets, which Moroccan police seem to be notorious for this in certain areas of the country, they did pay $60 for that. Liz is an international driving pro, but she did say that driving within Moroccan cities can be nerve-wracking if you are new to it. And I've seen how they drive in Morocco. I probably would not want to drive within the cities. Marrakesh in particular seems extremely chaotic, and Rabat, but just keep that in mind if you are thinking about driving a car in Morocco. Otherwise, she mentioned that driving in between cities was not too difficult. The roads were in good conditions. She just had the note about the traffic stops, so keep that in mind as well. And she did say overall, she 100% recommends renting a car if you do not have a lot of time and you're planning on bouncing around the country. But if you do plan to just go to a few cities and spend multiple days in each city, then it's not really worth it because the car will just be sitting at the hotel and you won't be getting your money's worth of the use. She also mentioned that the renting experience and drop-off experience was a little bit complicated. She mentioned that when she went to pick up her car in Casablanca, that the location of the car rental was actually by the train station, which required her to go out of the way with all of her luggage to find it and then back up to the area where she could find the car. And during the drop-off, she was instructed to go to a specific area, but basically she had to go through security, drop off the car, which led her out of the airport and then back into security again, which would be extremely frustrating. So she said that she would recommend, if you do rent a car in Morocco, to find one that is more conveniently located. And that's it, folks. That's it from me. That's everything you need to know about transportation in Morocco. I hope that you found this video helpful. I do have a printable guide that you can download. It's also on my Pinterest, so you can pin it to one of your pins if you want. I'll leave those links below. And let me know what you want to see next. This does conclude my Morocco series, and I have some interesting things coming up, mostly about being back home in the United States. So if there's anything that you want to see, leave that in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in my next video.